Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Johnson on Digital Works TV. Welcome, and we have another special guest, Maynard James. He's the assistant principal at Chapman Middle School in Huntsville. Now, it's kind of a bonus interview because we talked to one of your teachers, Brianna Mancour, who teaches engineering at Chapman Middle, and one of your students, Damian Reidner, who is a student in the engineering course. Well, we had a brief conversation on the phone. And here at Digital Works, we're all about model-based systems engineering. And you aren't in that, but you are working on your PhD. And am I correct? Your project is about systems. I'll let you describe it rather than me try to say it ineptly. What are you working on as part of your PhD?
People. It involves sustainable systems in education with a focus on equity.
Okay.
And so kind of looking at education and identifying current systems with people, dealing with people, and making them equitable.
Okay. One of the things in systems engineering that has to be taught to students early on is the whole idea that of systems thinking.
Yeah.
Or, everything's system. This pen is a system. It has all the parts, and without every part, it doesn't work. But you can take that systems thinking and move it into anything. And as you are doing with education, is that why? Am I saying that right for you?
Yeah, you are. And it's crazy because I got into it later on, like the whole systems thinking and finding out what it is, because I've always been in education. I've been in education for the majority of my life. And, I always felt like engineering was too hard because I didn't like math as well. And I love people and interacting with people and teaching. But, I think I told you over the phone, Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, that transformed my thinking. And I started kind of looking at systems thinking and how it applies to education. And so looking at it from a different lens and
okay, well, can you describe what you say when you say systems thinking in education? When you say that, what are you thinking?
Well, if you look at the school and education, it's a system, educational system. And then if you look at a school and even the classrooms, those are ecosystems. And there are cultures within the school and then even within classrooms. And so if you can create synergy, and everybody have a shared vision, you can really move mountains and you can obtain a lot. You can really cause transformation. And so I'm really looking at transformational leadership and transforming systems.
Okay, and within any system, there are parts.
Yep.
So my assumption is the teacher's a part, the students are a part, the environment's a part. I mean, am I correct that everything? And so you're attempting to take all those parts. And make is it
align them?
Okay, align them. When you say align, what do you mean?
Align them to a vision, a shared vision that everyone has. And I think when we have these conversations, you begin to understand individual visions that people have, and then as the person that's trying to design the system, you start really creating a story. And stories can really be sustainable, because when you talk about how was Chapman to a student or a teacher, they are going to tell you how it was for them and their experience there. And so really taking all of these stories, putting them together based on a shared vision. And so that's kind of like what happens. And what I've noticed in schools, we really sometimes work in isolation, in silos. So this is happening in this classroom. This is happening in that classroom. And as an admin, you get to go into different classrooms and really see how they're really interconnected. And so putting those pieces together.
Okay, in model-based systems engineering, you have a systems engineer. And he's got his arms around, a system or a subsystem. And then you have what are called modelers, which is what, that you can learn to be a modeler at Calhoun or at Wallace State. And those modelers are sent, requirements for a part or a subsystem, and their job is to fulfill those requirements and get it to the systems engineer. So if you're, I'm really stretching this probably, but if you're an educator like you, an assistant principal, and a teacher could be the modeler because the teacher has to get all the students to
Yep.
do their job.
Yep.
So as the principal, your job is to make sure the teacher's doing her job and make sure the students are doing their job.
Right.
Is that part of what you're talking about as a
like that.
systems thinking
It
for
is.
education?
Yeah.
I know.
That was pretty good. Yeah. Yes.
Trying to make a point.
Yes. Great example. Yeah. I would look at it like that because, again, part of systems is being able to see the different parts. And oftentimes, because I was in the classroom as a classroom teacher for years, I really just saw what was going on in my classroom.
Yeah. You didn't ever think of yourself as part of a larger
I
whole.
didn't. And so seeing it from this lens, from a leadership lens, you get to see the different parts and how they all interact and work together. Yeah.
Okay, so this sounds pretty right on to me.
Yeah.
So, does it kind of surprise you that people aren't already thinking of education this way?
It is surprising me.
Why do you think it is?
Because I think that you all, I don't want to say you all, but I think engineers keep it in their bubble. Like they feel like it's just, we're only going to use this in engineering. And I want us to start thinking outside the bubble and making these connections with schools. Because again, you have kids coming through like Damien and so many other kids who already, and if you look at the research, kids at a young age, they're already creative.
Yeah.
They have those creative juices. It's really when they're put in systems that isolate them and cause them to work in silos where they lose that creativity or it kind of dampens that. And so I think it's great now for Digital Works and other engineering companies with Huntsville being the hub.
I was going to ask you if this thing you're thinking of works better here than almost anywhere.
It should, yes. And I mean, I was born and raised here in Huntsville. And so I'm so glad that it's grown the way it has. But, like I said, I think we always kind of just look at it as you got to be great at math, engineering, to be an engineer. We lose that creative part. Yeah. And that's part of engineering as well, as they just talked about.
So if you do it as a systems thinking, would that accentuate the creative part of education? Is part of doing that, making sure that every student has access to every other part of the system?
Yes, that is what it is. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Making sure every student has access, and that's the equitable part too that I talked about. That's, do I have access to this information? Okay. And as a student, knowing that I can go here, or I can go there, or this person can direct me here to there, so I can see the bigger picture. That's to me equitable. That's what makes it equitable.
So, if say you get your doctoral thesis done and you get a good grade, you get your PhD, what do you do with this? What will you try to do with your thesis idea about changing education to a system way of thinking? Will you try to get education systems, other educators, other school systems to look at this idea? Yeah,
well, my focus is really action research, because really thinking about looking at it from a transformational leadership lens, doing it in the moment. Like, where I'm at, we have some amazing students, amazing teachers, and just taking kind of knowledge that I'm starting to ascertain now and apply it where I'm at. That's really the first steps. And so I've kind of been working with some of the teachers and designing my own system within the system that we use in school called PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And that all falls within MTSS, Multi-Tier Systems of Support. That's exactly what they're called. So they're called, they're systems in education. And using the language as an educator to design a system where people can see the different parts and work together and see how those parts interact and how they're interconnected in order to transform it.
Okay, so you see this someday down the road being your doctoral thesis being something that education in general is looking at and utilizing?
I do. Okay. I do, because I've been in education long enough where I see, and I've been in different systems. I taught overseas, in the system over there, I taught in Nashville, taught in Georgia. So I've been in different places, and At the time, my parents said, "Oh, you traveling, you're going too many places, stay where you are." But now, in hindsight, I realized I needed that because I've seen various systems and how they operate, and I can utilize that in really in my dissertation.
Okay. When you talk to other educators, and I'm sure principals, assistant principals, teachers, when you tell them what you're working on, what is the reaction you get?
I think that's the thing. I haven't really told a lot of people. I kind of told some of the teachers, and they're like, "Okay, all right, Mr. James, we see what you're doing," but I don't think they grasp it
Okay.
for real.
But you think they will down the road?
I hope so. I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good luck
Thank you. I
on your
appreciate
PhD.
it. Thank you.
And later on, when everybody's adopted this, I can say, I interviewed that guy.
There it is. I love it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being with us,
problem.
Maynard James.
Thank you.
And someday, Dr. Maynard James.
I like it. Thank you. All right.
All right, thank you. And thank you for being with us on Digital Works TV. Remember, it works.